right. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are. Welcome to this session. My name is Simon and I will be your host for tonight. Let me share my screen. This is me. I am Simon and I work on developer tooling. Normally, I work on Quirrel. Quirrel is a job queue for serverless, and I also am a level 2 maintainer at Blitz.js, which is why I'm here today. In this session, we will take a look at what Blitz is. We will create a simple application with it. And the goal for this session is for you to see, to get a grasp of what Blitz is, how it's like to use, and to get started and get a head start into it. The goal of this session is not to know 100% of Blitz, because that's just not possible in 1.5 hours. We will take the session very slow. It is meant as a workshop. So it should be slow enough that everybody gets to do the same things that I present at the front. Personally, I tend to be very fast when I show those things. And that is not good for a workshop. I would like to ask you to, whenever I'm too fast, write that in a chat. Can we test out the chat to see if that is working? Can I see some woohoo in the chat? Nice. Good evening, Daniel. Good evening, Paul. All right, that is working. Can we try out the Q&A? Could somebody open a question in the Q&A, or I'll try open a new question so you can see them. Just to test if everything's working and for you to get to know the tools. Paul, he asked, is this working? Let's type an answer. It is indeed. And now you should be able to say an answer question. So this is roughly how this is going to work. Please make use of chat, make use of the questions. I'll try to make this interactive, and I'm counting on you to play the other part in that interaction. All right, I think the first thing we should do is to actually talk about what Blitz actually is. So I opened this web page. This is just blitz.js.com. It's the normal website, and it says something about what Blitz is. So Blitz is the Fullstack React Framework. It's a JavaScript framework you can use to create web applications. And Fullstack in this case means that it does not only cover the front end, but also the back end databases. It's the full stack. It's the full 360 degrees of application development. And Blitz, it says its batteries included and it's inspired by Ruby on Rails. So Blitz brings a lot of conventions and it tries to guide you along how to build the applications. And then it is built on Next.js. I suspect some of you may have heard of Next.js. It's this JavaScript framework written by Vercel, which has become very popular amongst the React community. And a lot of the niceties that Blitz has are actually niceties from Next.js, and we just get to make use of them. Next.js is the best, says Jorge. Yeah, that's right. Next.js is really good. And Blitz.js is even better because Next.js plus some additional goodies on top. And then it says Blitz.js features a zero API data layer. And that is where I think most of what we talk about tonight, that's going to be about that, because that's really the differentiating factor between Blitz and Next, and also between Blitz and all other full stack application frameworks. So I think we should just get started and build a project, right? So what we're going to do is we're going to open up a terminal. And in that terminal, let me zoom in a bit so you actually can see something. I'll just go to dev/temp, and we will install the Blitz CLI. We can just do that using npm. So we do npm install --global and then Blitz. That's just the name of Blitz. So we install it. It will take a while because npm will download at least half of the internet. And we're just going to let it do its thing. You will see that there are some things failing in my installation because my installation of npm is weird. but it should work for you. At least I hope so. If it doesn't work, just ask in the chat, please. So this will install the global Blitz CLI. And with the Blitz CLI, we will create a new Blitz project in a couple of seconds. But until then, we just have to wait. I was told to prepare some jokes, by the way. So let's think of a joke. So I forgot it, but that's fine because Blitz has installed, and that is the error that I talked about. I didn't know what it's caused by, but it should not go for you. So now we have Blitz installed. We can run, for example, not Blitz, but Blitz --help, and it will print some nice help stuff here. There's a couple of commands, but the one that we're going to take a look at now is the new command. You can use that to create a new Blitz project. So what we're going to do is we say Blitz new, and we need to name a project. Please let me remove the project from yesterday, which I set up to try this workshop. We can run, why does removing files work so long? We will run Blitz new, and we're going to call a project Prismeet, because we are going to create a meetup.com clone for Prisma meetups. So we're going to call Blitz new Prismeet, press enter, and now it will do a whole bunch of stuff just to set up the application. It will ask you if your global Blitz version is outdated, upgrade. Yeah, that's a problem with my installation. You shouldn't be seeing this. I just pressed yes. And this will do some installation stuff again. And then it will set up your Blitz project. So let's talk about the application we're going to build. It's called Prismeet, and it will have a concept of users. Oh, the screen is black. Let me see. So that happened a minute ago. Daniel says, is it only me or is the screen black? Not here. Running Zoom native macOS app. Okay. So it seems like this is not a problem on my end. If it's a problem on my end, please let me know. All right, so refresh takes it. That's amazing. Okay. So after doing the whole install thing, it will ask you a couple of things. In this case, it will ask you which form library you want to use, and it recommends something. We're just going to press enter. This is not something that we should worry about at the moment. And it will set up a whole lot of files. I will open VS Code, another tab, so we can have a look at what this actually sets up. Oh, go away, Zoom thing. Yes, terminate this tab. So, oh, that was the wrong folder. Code Prismeet. I always do this for some reason. Okay, so this is the folder that the Blitz new command set up for us, and it contains a lot of things. So let's go through them just one by one. There is just some TypeScript files, a TypeScript configuration. Don't need to worry about this. There's a README. This is just some default README. Then there's a package.json, as you'd expect in a JavaScript project. There is pre-configured jest, also with TypeScript support. So you don't need to set that up in a Blitz project. There's the Blitz config that is similar to the Next config that you can do some Blitz configuration stuff in here, but we don't need to touch that today. There's the Babel config, don't need to touch that either. There's Prettier already set up for you. ESLint is set up, and you have some environment variables here. And then here are a lot of folders. And let's go through these folders. There's one thing for testing. We won't get into that today, just ignore it. There's the public folder that includes just some static assets to serve. We can also ignore that one. Mailers and the integrations folder, please also ignore those two. They are just pre-generated things for how to do mailing. And then the important two folders for us tonight are app and DB. And let's talk about DB first, because remember, Blitz.js is full stack. It is about both the front end on the browser and also about the backend and the database. So Blitz.js deals with databases. And while you might use any database client you'd want and any database you want, Blitz comes pre-configured and pre-installed with Prisma. And that is the reason that I'm here tonight, because this is the Prisma day, and that's why we're here. So it comes pre-configured with Prisma. So if you take a look into the DB folder, there's a couple files here. There's the migrations folder, just ignore that one. You may have heard about that one in an earlier workshop today. There is the index.ts file, which is some Prisma thing. So it just creates a new Prisma client, it defaults it. This is a helper thing that we can use later on. You'll see how it's used. And then there's the schema.prisma file. And that one is interesting. I suspect, again, that you have already seen a file like this, but let's just go through it. So the Prisma schema file is the file where you can specify your database schema. If you're working with a relational database, you need some schema, right? So this is where you do that. And up top, it has some meta information. It tells you what kind of database it should use. In our case, it's just SQLite by default, because SQLite is pretty easy to set up locally for this, like for doing the demo, like tonight. But you could also use Postgres or MySQL or whatever Prisma supports you. And some connection things, then we want to generate JavaScript client. But the interesting part is those models here. And Blitz comes with some like pre-made models for you. There's the user model, the session model, and the token model. And these three, you should not change a lot about these in the beginning, because they are for authentication. If you change them, you also need to change how authentication works, because Blitz comes with pre-built authentication for you, but you're free to change them, just not tonight. And remember, we want to build a meetup application. So we are going to add a new model. We want to have a model called meetup. There's a new table in our database, and every meetup has an ID. The ID is an integer. We use it as an ID field, and we will by default auto increment it. And meetup also has a date when it's happening. This is a date time. It has a subject, which is a string, and each meetup has a row of participants. So we're just going to call this participants, and then put a user array as the type here. And in order to make Prisma happy, we also need to add to the user model a meetups field. So this is a M2M relation now, because every user can go to multiple meetups, and every meetup can be gone to by multiple users. So we specified this model here, and now this is all we need to do to have our database configured. We are going to run Blitz.db push to have, okay, Drew, you raised your hand. How can I help you? What is your question? Sorry, okay, no worries. I will just click answer live. So that is good to know. There's a raise hand button, which Drew just found that out. And you can just raise it and I will immediately see it. So if for any reason I don't look at the chat, so just press raise hand and I will see that. All right, so we are going to run Blitz.db push to have our model pushed into the database. Blitz.db, oh no, it's not Blitz.db, sorry, it is Blitz Prisma. Those things tend to change. There's Blitz Prisma DB push, that's how it works, and you need to append preview feature, because DB push is still a preview feature for Prisma. And what it will do is we'll update our SQLite database. And now let's go about actually building an application, right? The data model is not everything. So to start developing with Blitz, you just type Blitz dev, or you could also run, let's take a look at the package.json, you could run npm run dev, for example. And this will kick up the Blitz development environment, it will compile some things and it will start a server. And now if we go to localhost 3000, we can see the Blitz default page. And this contains a couple of things. You don't need to read it really, because I will explain it. Till now, we had to look at the database folder, right? The most of our application code lives in app because it's application code. And in here, there's again a couple of folders. There's this API folder. This is just a placeholder. Let's delete that. There's the auth folder. This contains a lot of the pre-made authentication stuff that Blitz brings for you. So we don't need to look at that right now too. There's the core things. Please ignore them for tonight. And then there's pages. And in pages, every file that's in here will map to a route in the application. So the index.tsx file, that is index, like index, right? No, that doesn't work. Do you need to do index.html? Okay, that is just this index. Or if you go to /4 file, that would be the 4.4 page, as any other page here. And if we had to take a look at this index.tsx, this contains some React code. I will expect that you know somewhat how to read React. If not, please just ask in the chat and we'll go through it slowly. So what does this do? Let's go to the bottom. This exports default home. Home is this giant React component. This contains a lot of styles. Let's just delete those because styles actually don't make demos that much prettier. And then some other stuff, for example, here the footer. And what we'll do is we will just pretty fast delete everything except this suspense right here. And I'd like to ask you to just ignore this for the time being. We will take a look at what that is later. You can already see it has something to do with authentication. I can see a question. Yes, how do you make suspense work with Next.js? This is insane. It is, and we will find, well, I don't think I can tell you how we exactly make that work because that's like implementation details and I don't know them all from my head, but we will see how that works because suspense is pretty insane and suspense is great. All right, so this is our index page. And if we just type something there, for example, we had a new paragraph that says hello world, it will show up in our application. And now what we want to do is we want to maybe show a list of all upcoming meetups in this page, right? So we want to have like an unordered list, and in there there's a list item of, let's say the next meetup is a very short introduction to Blitz, and another one of remix explained using Vinyl. So this is how our list should look like. It should be a list of meetups. And like this is just static data. We want to have something from the database, right? Interesting. My light just started flickering. I will turn it off and now I'm back. Okay, so we want to get data from the database. And actually getting data from the database can be a very daunting task in single page applications, right? Because like if we were in a server-side rendered app, this would be pretty much fine. You just like your page is rendered on the server. You could just call the database and then that's it. But we want to build something that has a client-side part as well. And that's cool because we can just cache the static pages and make use of CDNs and all those fancy things. But how do we actually get data? And in the single page application model, you would have some API that you're calling. So you would start, for example, with Next.js, you would add a folder called API, and inside there you'd add your API route, and then you would maybe do fetch /API/meetups, and you'd maybe pass some header, and in there it would be like the authorization header. And this would just be a lot of work, right? This is not very comfortable. And with Blitz, there is that so-called zero API data layer. And when Brandon, so Brandon Bayer is the original author of Blitz, at some point he asked himself, like, well, normally I would use something like fetch, and then I need to decide whether I do a REST API or a GraphQL API or do WebSockets or RPC or anything. But to be honest, it doesn't really matter what I use. Like, no user's gonna come at me and say, well, I love that you're using GraphQL. It makes my Facebook experience so snappy. That's not gonna happen. But what is going to happen is that people tell you, well, you're developing too slow, I want those features and all that stuff. So Brandon asked himself, how would this look like if it were easy? What is the easiest way to fetch data from anywhere? And the answer for Blitz is, well, fetching data, like you just use a function for that, right? Like we always use functions to get something from somewhere, just plain JavaScript functions. Why can't I do this here? And indeed, that is what you can do. So we will go into the app folder again, and we will create a new subfolder called queries. Queries is a magic name. Please ignore that. I will come back later to this. And in the queries folder, we will add a new file called get.meetups.ts. Meetups.ts. This is just a normal TypeScript file. And in this TypeScript file, we will write just a plain TypeScript function. We will say export async function get meetups. And this function can now just import the database, import DB from DB. This import from DB is just like the db.index.tss. That's just what it is. And now we can return, or we can call db.meetup.findMany. You can await the result and just return it. And so now the type or the signature of this function is it takes no arguments and it will return a promise of meetups. And this will run on the backend. And now to use this in the front end in our index.tsx file, we can just import it. So we can write import get meetups from app/queries/get meetups. And then we can just use it. So it has no default export. I think we should say export default. Yes. So we can just use it. So we could technically just call get meetups here. And the return type would be a promise of meetups, but that is not how the render model in React works. In React, rendering a component needs to be instantaneous, needs to be synchronous. You can't use promises here. But there's this nice helper function from Blitz called useQuery. And useQuery is a hook. If you've used React, you might have come across hooks. And to use query, you can pass as the first thing your query, get meetups. And then as a second thing, your arguments. In our case, the argument is just undefined. We don't have any arguments. And the return value of this useQuery thing will be an array that contains a bunch of meetups. This is array destructuring syntax. This just means take the result of this function and then extract the value at the 0th index out of it. And if we hover over this type is just the meetup array. This is the same type that is returned here. All right. And now if we use this, let's just, instead of these things here, put meetups.map. And then for every meetup, we want to have, how does this work? Another bracket. We want to have a list item. That list item should contain meetup.subject. And the key of this list item should be meetup.id. So now it won't show anything because there's nothing on the database. So let's add something to the database. We will, in the new terminal, run Blitz.db Studio. Blitz.db Studio, it's Prisma Studio, I think that's the right one. Sorry. That will open up the Prisma Studio. Drew, How can I help you? You raised your hand. What was the command to add the DB migration blitz? That was, let me open this. So what we just did was blitz prisma db push -- preview feature. And what this does is it does not create a migration. It just pushes the schema straight to the database, discarding any data that's in there at the moment. That is fine during development. If you work with production data, you should actually create a migration. But it's Prisma DB push. Does that answer your question, Drew? Great. So now we have a Prisma Studio. This is just like a database viewer for your development database. And we will press on Meetup, open the Meetup model, and add some new records. So let's add the record for, how did we call them? Where those, oh no, I deleted this. I think it was a very short introduction. It was also remix explained using vinyl. And let's add some nice dates, shall we? Why didn't this save? Remix explained using vinyl. Save my change. Let's add some nice dates. So this one is going to be in 2021, 06:30, I don't know, at 20 p.m. Zulu time. And this one is going to be just an hour later. All right, so now we have some data in a database, and now if we open up this thing again, it will work. But if we reload the page, there's going to be an issue. Oh my gosh, problem. I certainly didn't foresee that. So what does this say? This say, error, a React component suspended while rendering, but no fallback UI was specified. This is the suspense feature that was talked about earlier. It is what you can see here. And how does this work? So here you call this hook called useQuery, right? And it will need to do some asynchronous work in the background because fetching something from an API, which this does, is not instantaneous. It needs some time. But React expects these components to immediately finish working, or to immediately finish rendering. So the new feature from React 17 is suspense, and suspense allows you to deal with asynchronous data and deal with asynchronous work just as if it were synchronous. So what this does is it goes through this component, it tries to render the component, and useQuery will see, well, I should have some data, but I don't have any. And it will throw an error that React then parses, and that is called suspending. So the component will say, hold, please stop, I suspend. Please do not continue to render me until I am finished suspending, until I am finished loading the data I need. And that is what useQuery does in this moment. It suspends because it doesn't have any data. And React says, well, it's something suspended, but I don't know what to do with it. Because whenever something suspends, React is looking for the suspense fallback. That is a component higher up in the tree that tells React what to do when something suspends. And in this case, for this user info thing, we'll just render loading. Now what we'll do is we will extract our meetups list into another component. We call it meetups list. It will make the call to useQuery, and it will in turn return this nice unordered list. And then we can just embed that meetups list component here and wrap it into suspense and give it a fallback, say loading meetups. And now if we look here, we'll see loading meetups very shortly, and then it will have our data. And now we have data in our front end, and we can open up our Prisma Studio again, and maybe we can change something about this. Remix explained using beta unlocks. save the change, and then if we press again on this, it is automatically updated. That is one of the niceties of use query. But let's change this again to vinyl because I think the joke is much better that way. Okay, so to be honest, this might look like a lot of magic. How can you just import a function and then have it be available in the front end? Like, what is happening here? Because the database access is not happening from the front end. It is happening from the server. And what is happening here is, remember that I told you this folder is magic? It is a magic name. And whenever Blitz says an import from a file in a queries folder, it will take this import, remove it, and replace it with, conceptually speaking, a function that does the fetch on its own. So this will just fetch from API/queries/get meetups. So that is like a compile step. So let's just revert this. So we will take that import from queries and we will replace it with a function that calls the backend to do this stuff. And in the backend, we will generate that function for you. This is basically auto-generated RPC. We can see what's happening if we open up the network tab in our browser. So if we reload the page, we can see that here is the fetch to get meetups. It does a HTTP post to /API/queries/get meetups. And in its request data, it will send over some parameters. In this case, this is just undefined. And then the response will be the response from that thing. So this is what the database responded. It's an array of 2 values with an ID, a date, and a subject. And then it will also save some metadata and say that 0.date, so the 0th object at the date field is actually a date. So it can take that string and make it into a date again. So that's what happens behind the scenes. This is mostly RPC, RPC standing for remote procedure calling or remote function calling. And that is what's happening here. This is the zero API data layer. And it's not called zero API because there is no API. There apparently is one, like I've shown you the API. But it's called zero API because you don't have to write one as a developer. And you don't need to think about writing APIs ever again. You don't need to think about what's the perfect HTTP verb for your use case. You don't need to think about REST completeness. You don't need to think about any of these things. Just write your functions and code. All right. Let's take a short breath. This was queries, and this might seem like magic, but it's really not. And this is the main, like the core feature of Blitz. This is the characteristic feature. All right, see a question. Does the request body have GraphQL? No, this request body does not have GraphQL. This is just plain old JavaScript, plain old JSON. So in this case, this is just a weird way of saying undefined because like there's no undefined in JSON, so it needs to do some weird stuff. You could certainly parse a GraphQL string, but Blitz is built to not need GraphQL. Does it answer your question up to? Great. Why do we need to use do query? Why cannot we call get meetups directly? Great question, Paul. So Paul wants to know why do we need to use that use query hook? Why can't we just do const meetups is get meetups? And the reason for this is that get meetups is an asynchronous function. It does not return instantly, but it returns eventually when the request is finished. You can see that because this returns a promise, right? And this does not work with the React component model because React function components need to render immediately, and they cannot wait for anything to finish. But what you can do actually, so you can actually call those functions immediately, just not from a React component. So what you might do is if you have like async function something, it is totally fine to just do await get meetups. And then like maybe do some meetups filtering or something. This is totally fine. You can perfectly do this. It just doesn't work in a React query and in a React component because React components can't be async. Does that help, Paul? Yes, amazing. Cool. Then let's get on to the next thing, shall we? We want to build a details page for every single meetup, and we want to show when the meetup is going to be, and what's the title, and maybe some other things that we want to build today, but just to give you a grasp of how that might work. So we want to go, for example, to /meetup number 1, not to 1, 2, 3, 4, to meetup number 1, and have it show up actually, have it show up the actual meetup. And to do that, we need to create a new page in the pages folder. It will be at the in the meetup subdirectory, and we will add a new file with square brackets opening, square bracket closing, and between that, let's call that meetup id.tsx. This is a parameter in the URL. If you know Next.js, you may have used this. So if I go to meetup/1, the meetup ID parameter, this thing right here will be 1. To validate this, let's create a Blitz page. So we're gonna have a thing called meetup details page. It is a Blitz page. Blitz page. We're going to import this. It is a Blitz page. And it will, for starters, just return, let's make a main thing of this, a hello world. And we will export this thing, export default meetup details page. And if we now reload this thing, there will be the hello world here as any ID we go to, right? And to get access to that parameter, we can use the use_param hook that Blitz gives us. We can call it. We can give it the name of our parameter. So meetup ID is the name of this parameter because that's just the spelling in here. And we'll say that we expect this to be a number just for the return type to work. And now we can have a meetup ID here. And let's actually print this out. ID is meetup ID. And now we can see here the ID is 1. It may be something entirely different. Probably not. Wouldn't this work? Ah, now it works. Okay. So that's how you get access to these IDs. And now what we want to do is we want to show the specific details of the meetup of that ID, right? So we're going to add a new query. Again, in our queries folder, we're going to add a new query called get meetup.ts. And this will be very similar to our query in get meetups. So we're going to export as default an async function called get meetup. And now this thing will take a parameter. And it's just the ID of the meetup. And it will again import the database from DB and call db.meetup.findUnique. This is just a Prisma call, right? Right now. We will find a unique meetup where the ID is ID. We will await a result and return it, or even better, we will save it. Meetup. And so this might be null because the meetup might not exist. There might not be any meetup with that ID. And if the meetup is not existent, we will throw a new not found error. And in all other cases, we will return new meetup. So now we can take this function and just use it in our meetup page. We will import it. Import meetup from app/query/getMeetup. We will also import use query, and we will have this. We will have this query be called and pass get meetup to it. In our case, passing it meetup ID as a parameter. And it says this doesn't work because get meetup expects a number as its parameter. Meetup ID is number or undefined. That is for peculiar technical reasons in Next.js. We will just overwrite this and place exclamation mark like this to make it be a number always. And the return of this will be a meetup, right? So what we now can do is we can add a new paragraph of the subject. This will include meetup, as will contain meetup to subject. And now if we save, this does not work because again, we forgot to add a suspense fallback. So let's just add another component, meetup details. There are ways to get around those suspense things we always need, but we won't go into that today. We will return suspense here with meetup details. And just extract this into another component. And we need to place a fallback, loading. And now if we load this again, this could not be found because there is no meetup at ID 1123. And why does this show 44? Because in our getMeetup.js, we threw a not found error. If we had not thrown this, or if we, for example, had thrown a not authorized, no, unauthorized, authorization error, that's what it's called, then let's see, then we would have been shown a 43 instead. Marcio asks, the Blitz queries work like SWR to refetch the data. Correct, except it's not SWR, but React query. So the use query hook we use here is actually a very thin wrapper around React query by Tanner Winsley. And this does a lot of the magic things with use query. So for example, it will, if we go back to our index page here and open up our Prisma Studio, is 5555. If we change something here, very short introduction to Whiteboard, and save the change, you won't see any changes, but whenever we click on this page, it will immediately update the data. And that is nice in development, but it's even nicer in production because that means like almost real-time feeding data without actually having to have real-time data sources. Because what this will do is whenever the user reopens the page, it will automatically update the data to have it feel live. Yes, but it's mostly SWR. Let me close out some of those questions. Marcio, I just assume that this answers your question. If not, please open another one. So let's get back into the meetup. If we now put an actually existent meetup ID, this will show our subject. So nice, this works now. Let's maybe also show you the date. The date is meetup.subject and meetup.date.to local date string. And we also have a date in beautiful German date notation. Let's actually use ISO. It's a lot. Okay, and now we might want to link from these things to our details pages, right? So if we open up our index.js next page again, the easiest way to make links work is to just wrap this in anchor tags. As you might know from web development, you just put an href and we put in /meetups/meetup.id. And this would totally work. You could just press on it, it would reload the page and open what you wanted to open. But it would reload the page, and this is a single page application. We don't need to do a full reload. And to circumvent this, there is the link component. We can import that from Blitz, and we can use it here to wrap this around the anchor. The link component, by the way, is just straight stolen from Next.js. And we can put our href into there. We need to keep the anchor tag here. And now if we use this, if we press here, you see that there's no reload and it instantly navigates. And this is because if you use the link component, Blitz will automatically prefetch the page behind this to make for even snappier navigation. Okay, so now we have our links and we have those hrefs here and they're based on strings, but there can be typos in those strings. And like, this is not the nicest thing, because what happens if we move a component? And for that, like, so you're totally free to use those strings, by the way, but there's an alternative in Blitz that you may use, which is the routes object. It is also imported from Blitz, and you can use this to say routes dot, in our case, I think we need to actually press on this again. Routes.meetup details page, that is the page we just created. And we're going to pass it here. And it will know that as parameters, it needs a meetup ID that is just taken from here. And we will pass meetup.id. And now you have an href that still works the same, but it's, I think, even more descriptive, because this actually leads you to the page. Okay, so that is how links work. And now we can see this, we can click through here, and we might want to add support for subscribing to one of those meetups, or to participate, right? So we open up the meetup ID page again, and we add a button that says participate. It has an on-click handler. And in the on-click handler, like for starters, we're just going to call window.alert or to just see that this works. Okay, this works. And now what we want to do is we want to call the database to participate in this meeting. How would we do that? Because we only have queries, and queries are for reading data. Well, there is mutations. Mutations is the counterpart to queries. And it works very similar. I accidentally pasted something here. So it works very similar. Instead of doing something in the queries folder, we will add a new folder, call it mutations, and add a new file here called participate in meeting.tsx. Let's actually spell that right. Participate in meeting. No, it's not a meeting, it's a meetup, right? In meetup. And here we're going to again export as default a function called participate in meetups. And in meetup, it will take a meetup ID of the meetup where I want to participate. And then it will use the database to call db.meetup.update, and we want to update the participants field. We want to only update the meetups where the meetup ID is the one that was asked for. And for the participants, we want to connect an existing user, the one with the ID. With what ID? Like, how do we know what user are connected here? We need some way of getting authentication data. And remember, Blitz brings authentication and an authorization for you. What you can do is, or not what you can do. So these queries and mutations always get passed a second parameter, and the second parameter contains context information. So we're just going to call it context, and the type of this will be the context type that you can import from Blitz. And on this context type, you can call context.session.user_ID. And user ID will be a number or null, because it will be a number if a user is logged in and the user has an ID, and it will be null if the user is not logged in or if there is no user. So we need to handle this somehow. And luckily, there's this helper function. So what we could just do is we could do if context.session.user_ID, if there's none of these, we were going to throw a new authorization error. You're not logged in, right? We could do that, or we could do context.session.authorize. And what this will do is it will make sure that the user who does this mutation, who does this request, that they have the rights to do this. So we could just pass a role that they need to have, and that they are logged in. And if we make this call, you can see that the type of this here changes. It is no longer number or null, but it's just number. And that is just magic from TypeScript. It's pretty cool. So what happens now? We can take this participate in meetup function, and in our onClick handler here in meetup.id.tsx, remember that's the thing that's called when you press on this button, we can just call participate in meetup. Well, we need to import it before. Participate in meetup from app/mutations/participate in meetup. Why doesn't this work? Why? So something wrong. Mutations. This doesn't like me. App slash. Oh, it's in the wrong folder. This seems better. Yeah. So now this should resolve. No, doesn't again. Why not? This is the joy of live coding. Mutations, participate. That works. Okay. So we can just call participate in meetup, except it's not that easy because the TypeScript signature doesn't work perfectly. So we have this wrapper for you from Blitz called invoke, and you can call invoke participate in meetup with the meetup ID. And this will then just work. You can await it. And then after invoking this, we can just call success. Looking forward to see you there. Emoji. And now if we press on participate, it won't do anything. Because if we take a look at our console again, it says authentication error. Well, obviously, stupid me, we didn't log in. We're going to go back to our localhost page. We're going to press sign up. And this now is just the pre-made sign up thing by Blitz for you. As you can see, like it leaves some room for styling for you. And we can put in an email. My email is final@prisma.com. For some reason. Password is password. Oh, password is not enough characters. Let's take password. Password done. Create account. No, I don't want to save this password. So we're now logged in. We're a user with the ID 1. Our role is user. And if we now go back to this page and press participate, success. Looking forward to see you there. We are in. And if we take a look at the database, localhost 5555, and we reload those things, we can see that it didn't work for some reason. Oh, we need to wait this. That would make sense. participate. This works. Okay. So now we have our user here, vinyl.prisma.com with some password and things set up. So this is how mutations work. We are at 9 p.m. at my clock. That means we're 55 minutes in. 30 more minutes to go. And I'd like to do a short refresher pause just for everybody to get something to drink, for me to refresh a bit. And then we will see each other again in, let's say, 5 minutes, right? I'm gonna, will the code of the workshop be available later on somewhere? Oh, yes, I can publish it, will do. So I will shut off my video cam and be gone for 5 minutes, drink something, and I looking forward to see you here again in 5 minutes. All right, it is 9:05, at least for me in CST, and I am fresh to go back into our Blitz workshop. Let's do a quick recap of what we've seen. We have seen what Blitz is. It's like Ruby and Rails inspired and all those fancy things. We have seen the Blitz new command, which sets up this directory for you, including the important directories DB and app. And we have seen how to use queries and mutations to get data and write data. There is a plethora of other features in Blitz, but I just wanted to make sure that you really get mutations and queries, because that is the characteristic thing about Blitz. That is the one thing you won't find anywhere else. I thought a while about what other feature I'd like to show you, and this other feature is recipes. Recipes is a way for you to quickly and easily install additional dependencies and additional projects you might want, and not only install them, but also set them up. So what you can do is you can run blitz install Tailwind, for example. And when you run this will take a while because it's downloading some things, and then it will do some things and help you install Tailwind into a project. I will take that question and answer it later on. Okay. So this will install all kinds of dependencies for Tailwind. It'll take a while because Tailwind is big and my internet is bad. This is taking very long. What is it doing now? And now it will greet us with the recipe. So this is the Tailwind CSS recipe. It will install all necessary dependencies. It's written by Adam Markin, and we can press enter to continue. Now it will it will guide you through what it's doing. It will tell you it is installing dependencies at the moment. And then after a while, it will tell you, well, I'm going to create those new config files for Tailwind. Press enter to continue. I will add a style sheet, and I will update your app.tsx to support Tailwind. And when it's done that, it will have installed Tailwind, and we can now use Tailwind in our application. At least I think so. Yes. So if we go to our meetup ID thing again, we could, for example, here at the H1, add the class name, maybe background red 500. And this wouldn't work because I don't know Tailwind apparently. But I still work with Tailwind. Tailwind, let's do rotate 90 instead. Rotate 90. I think we need to restart our server. Sometimes you need to do that, especially with configuration changes. So we'll compile again. And if we reload this, then then it will have Tailwind styles applied. Well, let's just not use floated 90 background red 500. And that will work. See, I know my Tailwind in the end. So that is how to install Tailwind. It's just one command. Or you can also run Blitz install Quirl, which is, again, the project that I'm working on. So maybe a bit biased, but I really like Quirl. This will install everything you need to get a job queue running. So what you now can do is you can create, for example, in your in the API folder, you can create a new queue. You can say, let's call it reminders queue.ts and then export as default. Let's import from queue construct. Okay, let's quickly go through the recipe. We'll install some things to use with Quirl. So we can export a queue, which is at API/reminders queue. This queue will take some email to remind, and then it will just send an email, in this case, print something to the console, because sending an email is a bit hard in this workshop. And so this does red squiggly because it's installing dependencies. But what we can now do is, in our annotation here, we can import the reminders queue from app/API/reminders queue. And then whenever somebody participates in a meetup, we can enqueue to the reminders queue. Oh, you need to use crawl/blitz. See, I now noted. You can enqueue into the reminders queue and give it the email of the user that's logging in. Is that the email on here? Let's use some weird email. Final prisma.com. Queue this and have it be delayed for 5 minutes, let's say. And now if we run Quirl locally, then we can go press and participate. It will create a new job here, and we can open up the, let's open Chrome. We can open up, because this doesn't work in localhost for some reason. In Safari, it doesn't work in Safari. We can open up UI quirl.dev, and we will see the, oh, we won't see a job because it's already been executed. This is weird. We should be seeing that job here, and then we could execute it. That doesn't work in this case. So the point is, you can use Blitz recipes to install things to have them available. Okay, so that is that is the content that I wanted to go through in this workshop. There's one thing very special about Blitz that I'd like to emphasize, which is Blitz's community. If you take a look at the website, we do emphasize this quite a lot down below here. The most important of our aspect of the project really is our community. We're a very, very vibrant and warm community. We're very welcoming, and we are a community of great people. There is a big Discord where all kinds of people that work with Blitz, that work on Blitz, that build startups with Blitz, that build internal tools with Blitz, they come together and they talk about what they like about Blitz and what they want to be changed. And the community really is key, and it's amazing. And if you're somewhat interested in Blitz, I'd love to welcome you to our Discord community. There's the link here. Just join, say hello, and be amazed by the amazing community. Okay, then now we are at 21:15 or 14, but I think 15 counts. And we are at time for the content. Now we have time for questions of all kinds. I am looking forward to answering your questions, but first I will go into lazy question answering mode because I stayed long enough today. So I guess we will start with the question by Jorge. Sorry for waiting so long for this. So Jorge asks, is it possible to add social authentication strategies in Blitz? There's already a helper for that. Yes, there is. There is an integration for Passport.js, which is the main social authentication tool in JavaScript. And you can just use any passport strategy with Blitz together. Abdu asks, is there a way to let mobile apps integrate with Blitz backend? That is a very good question. So in the beginning, when we started working on Blitz, we thought, well, the mobile integration is just like 3 months around the corner. Now it's 50 months later and we still haven't started working on it. But technically, so we're very interested in building an amazing integration for mobile apps. But at the moment, there is no such easy integration, for example, like using the crows and mutations. What you can do, however, is you can use the API routes, the normal ones from Next.js, and just call those things from your mobile app. That's thing A you can do. And then thing B is, for a lot of use cases, it is fine to have single page applications that can be installed, right? So there is this package called, I think, Next SPA for Next single page application that makes Next.js apps really good on mobile and pretty much a replacement for mobile apps in a lot of cases. And that plugin is fully compatible with Blitz.js, and you can just use that one. So these are the two options: either use API stuff, use the API routes, or use mobile apps. Okay, so there is one question in the chat: is it possible to use Passport to add two-factor auth with TO2P to Blitz auth? I don't know. Ask in the community. That is too involved for me to know. I have not worked with TO2P yet. Then John asks, is Blitz production ready? I see V1 is landing in a few months' time still. That is correct. V1 is landing in a few months. And we are not at V1 at the moment. However, I think being at V1 means a different thing for Blitz than it means, for example, for Redwood or for Remix, because Blitz builds upon Next.js, and Next.js is more than production ready, right? It is very battle tested, and Blitz does some things on top of Next, but I wouldn't call Blitz production ready, but it's close to. And personally, I'm running Blitz in production for 8 months now for the crawl dashboard, and it's working perfectly fine. I think that's the thing that might be interesting to you. So there's this Quirrell page that I have shown in the beginning. This is just the marketing page for Quirrell, but this is built with Blitz.js. And all of this, what you see here, is just static things, and then you can go to the dashboard and you can see the loading thing from suspense. And these things were loaded with a query, and you can maybe open this one and see like the very boring graphs that are here. And this is just like, this is the application part of this trade, right? So you can use it equally well for building applications and for building content-heavy things. Although for applications, you'll get to see a lot more of the benefits of Blitz. And I'm running Blitz.js for a long time, production for crawl.dev. And actually, the source code for this is open source. It's on crawl/crawl.dev. This is the fully open source code for curl.dev. This is just a normal Blitz application. I didn't even bother to change the README. And this is what I'm using to serve my clients. All right. Any other questions? If not, I have a question for you. Now that you're saying like a small grasp of Blitz, how do you imagine could this improve your software development workflow? How do you imagine this could improve it? Jorge asks, Blitz already uses Next.js 11. How much time takes for to the latest Next.js version? So there was this change a couple weeks ago where Blitz started having its own Next.js fork. So in the beginning, Blitz was a compile to Next solution. So we would take your code and we would do some compilation things, for example, the API and queries compile step, and we would output a fully Next.js compliant application that could then just be run by Next. And back then, we would just have updated Next.js easily, and it would not be a problem. Then a couple of weeks ago, Blitz forked Next.js, not to do huge modifications, but to do very small, subtle modifications to have a better integration. And I think, I'm not entirely sure on this, but I think we already upgraded to Next.js 11. And it generally does not take a lot of time. I think Brandon was done in like, I'd like to say less than a day from the Next.js 11 announcement. But I'm pretty sure it was less than a day, but so pretty fast. Mark says, I think Blitz would help by keeping teams organized. No need to worry about being blocked by backend developers. Yes, that definitely is a big bonus. And also makes it a lot easier for front-end developers to work with the backend. It's really sort of full stack. Miguel writes, Blitz.js is awesome. It gives so many batteries included. So far, I haven't found a single thing that wasn't thoroughly documented. That is nice. Documentation is really, documentation is key. And to be honest, I think every project really struggles with having great documentation because it's just a lot of work to have amazing documentation. It's nice to read that you haven't found a single thing that you didn't find. Okay, John says, very happy to see I won't need to write a lot of boilerplate code for auth queries and mutations. Looking forward to reading further into all the features. Definitely. And remember to join the community. You'll be welcomed very warm. Marcio writes, right now I'm reading docs. I recently made some dashboards with Next and Prisma, and Blitz can be a solution to make the things done faster. Definitely. So when I started building the cruel dashboard with Blitz, I was lightning fast, really. And I was very surprised by how fast using Blitz works. Okay, cool. So I will stay around a little longer. If any of you have questions, please feel free to ask me. If any questions come up in the future, feel free to tweet at me, write me an email in the DMs, or just go to the Blitz Discords and ask there. There are help channels and there are a lot of discussion channels, and we are very happy to talk to all of you about how great Blitz is, or about roadblocks you come up with Blitz, or anything Blitz related or non-Blitz related. we're looking forward to meet you. Thank you, Abdu. That is nice of you. All right. There's a question from Mark. What is the largest pain point with Blitz development? That is a good question. There's a question that reminds me of interviewing. What is your biggest flaw? Well, what is it? So I would say it is databases. Because, say, with Blitz development, so you would love your applications to run serverless. For example, you have to run on Vercel or have to run on Netlify. And that works perfectly fine for most things, except for this one little pain point, which is databases. With those queries and functions, they become API functions, right? And those API functions are deployed to either the Vercel functions or Netlify functions, pointers to something serverless. And with that serverless deploy model, those functions, like there are a lot of instances, and they would need to open a lot of database connections to your database, for example, to a Postgres database or to your MySQL database. And SQL connections are not cheap, and not cheap as in they cost a lot of money, but as in there aren't a lot available in your database. For example, the database I'm running for curl has support for like 20 to 50 connections or something. And you need to put a bouncer, a PG bouncer in front of it that has some connection pooling. And there are sometimes problems with connections dropping or connection pool running out of room. And that is because of that serverless deployment. This does not happen if you deploy server full. So for example, if you deploy to Heroku, or if you deploy to Render or any of these. But deploying server full has its own problems, mainly that it's hard to make it performant when you have clients all around the world. And a lot of other problems. Also, it's a little more work to administrate. And I would love for serverless getting better support for databases. But we'll see. I am pretty sure that there are companies working on this. So I hope that this pain point will be mended in the future. But that was a good question mark. A good question, comma, mark, not question mark. Cool. So I see we are still 11 people, but I will call it a day since we're almost at 21:30. And I wish you a wonderful evening, day, afternoon, whatever time it is for you. It was great to answer your questions. It was great to well, talk to you. I wanted to say great to see you, but I didn't see you. And I am looking forward to see you sometime soon again. Cool. Bye.